Hello, I'm David Berkowitz with another edition of AI Insiders from AI Marketers Guild by Marktecture on this very festive day here in New York. I'm guessing I don't need to explain it with my change in attire. I do have my AMG t-shirt on underneath, but that'll have to be hidden for the time being as we have some bigger fish to fry tonight. Some, I guess, Texas flavored fish or something. But enough about that because we have, it's hard to pick a favorite guest, but definitely one of the guests we've had who I know better than most others and I've gotten to know very well over the past 20 plus years. Scott Monty calling in from Michigan today. I don't even have to look up his bio or how I know the guy, as I'm often scrambling to do before some of these calls and be like, wait, what led them to this call, even if they're a very esteemed guest? Because Scott and I got to know each other when I was an early marketing blogger and agency guy, and Scott was running Ford's social accounts and really creating playbooks on the fly for how brands can go and take part in conversational media, which I think is like more important than social media, which today is just for so many just another media buy. So Scott, yeah, I mean he writes the timeless and timely newsletters, does podcasts, all kinds of things where he shares very thoughtful, educated, informed, human first views on things. He's doing a lot on educating us about leadership in this AI driven era, which often seems lacking or outsourced to algorithms. And so, for something a little different than who's got the best algorithm and what is the best marketing tech, I couldn't resist a chance to have a conversation with Mr. Monty on the show. Scott, I got to shut up and just welcome you already. Welcome.
David, thank you for that introduction. I have to say the smoke and mirrors are working perfectly. So everything is going according to plan. Um, it's interesting. In the role I was in at Ford, leading digital communications and social media strategy, people would come into my office and they would see essentially a pen humidor where I kept my fountain pen collection and I had personalized stationery on the desk behind me. And their minds would kind of disassociate for a moment. They're like, well, aren't you the digital guy? And of course, but at the same time, I realized that we need to hang on to the analog too. We need to celebrate the stuff that is tactile and that connects us with our humanity. And I don't know if you can see behind me here. I actually have a 1958 Remington typewriter on my desk.
This isn't just an AI generated thing to make it look smart, is it? It's like these are real books and paper things and typewriter
It
things.
is. It is. And this has been a constant theme for me is, embracing the future while understanding the past. And for me, it's really a matter of if you can understand where we've come from and if you can understand humanity and its consistency over time, then that will help position you for whatever comes next, whatever the platform or technology happens to be. If you understand how humans relate, how humans emote, how humans react, then you can actually, well, not exactly predict, but you can circumnavigate to where you triangulate to where you need to go for the future.
Well, I love that. And I mean, where right like right now, I mean, do you even see us in any analogous point? Yeah, everyone's trying to yeah go and say like, yeah, is this like the Industrial Revolution or even just like the start of the internet age or the start of like back when the printing press came? Like is there any fitting analogy that we can learn from right now?
Uh, I don't know that there is an exact analogy, but here's the thing, and I'm working on dropping the next issue of the newsletter. There's a lot that's gone into this one. because it was sparked last week by Pope Leo's encyclical. And I'm sure everyone has seen it or heard about it by now. Magnificus, Magnificent Humanity is what the translation is from the original Latin. And I had written a piece exactly a year ago when Pope Leo was elected about his very intentional selection of his name. He's Pope Leo the 14th. And look, just as an aside, um, while I am Catholic, I'm talking about the encyclical as its broader applications to humanity, not as church doctrine, because I think there's a broader lesson for humanity here. And Pope Leo has kind of come out with a lot of statements, a lot of positions on things that make it very clear that he is advocating for all of humanity, not just for Catholics. Um, but he named himself after Pope Leo the 13th. Now, Leo the 13th was Pope in the 1890s, and his first encyclical was Rerum Novarum, or On New Things. And it was very much pointed towards the Industrial Revolution, towards unions and trades and understanding how humanity needed to grapple with the ongoing development of technology and industry in a world that was changing very quickly from decades before. And I think it's an interesting parallel. Obviously, it's much different technology that we're dealing with now, but it is disruptive. It is affecting workers and workers' rights. It is affecting how people are paid. It is affecting how we interact with each other. So I think there's a marvelous parallel here. And the fact that Leo is following in his namesake's footsteps, I think, is something to keep track of.
And so, yeah, I almost hate to ask you a kind of boring question, but I feel like you might have a more interesting answer to a boring, hackneyed question. And that's like, where are you with this whole like AI is taking our jobs? Like how scared, optimistic, all this? What are you seeing?
It's hard to tell at this point. I think there's always going to be fear mongering. There's going to be the pearl clutchers who resist new technology coming along.
Mm.
There's going to be the Cassandras of the world, or for those of you not versed in Greek mythology, the Chicken Littles of the world. Um, and there's some nugget of truth to it. Otherwise, it wouldn't constantly be uh, repeated. And here's the thing: I think certain companies, certain CEOs, certain boards have used it as an excuse to cut jobs.
Mm.
Whether or not AI is actually replacing these jobs, I think we've seen it in shareholder meetings, we've seen it in layoff notices. It's the same formula of treating human assets as expendable and simply wiping out jobs for the sake of efficiency. You know, the top piece I pinned on my newsletter website, timelesstimely.com. Um, if you haven't seen what this is based on, you really should go look it up. There was an episode in the fifth season of The Twilight Zone in 1962 called "The Brain Center at Whipple's." And there's this CEO who's hard at work in his office. He's reviewing a film that he is sending out to all his shareholders about this new computer system that he's putting in place that he calls the Brain Center at Whipple's Manufacturing. And they've got over 200,000 people worldwide and 60,000 people at this one factory. And he's bragging that not only can this new brain center replace all of these jobs, but it also takes out all of the pension costs, the healthcare costs, the time off request, et cetera, and truly dehumanizes the company with a flick of a switch. And ironically, it's his chief engineer that's trying to talk sense into him and to understand the ethics about it and why humans need jobs, they need purpose, they need pride and craftsmanship, this connection to our work that we have. And it's available for free streaming on Tubi if you go look it up. I highly, highly recommend it. I don't think there is a single Twilight Zone episode that has held up as well as the Brain Center at Whipple's.
And so, I mean, you're focused more on leadership now, right? Um, yeah. How are like, do you even have any kind of like counsel that comes up more often than not in terms of how leaders should and shouldn't adopt and adapt to AI?
Yeah. Um, Most leaders, and I'm sure everyone on this call has experienced someone like this,
Hmm.
will look at a shiny new piece of technology
Hmm.
and become distracted or enamored by it, or both. And they suddenly have GMOOT syndrome,
Hmm.
GMOOT, which stands for get me one of those. And suddenly everyone's scrambling and they're trying to figure out what our strategy is. What's our social media strategy? What's our crypto strategy? What's our AI strategy? And suddenly they're chasing down these rabbit holes or these latest trends, without looking at the broader arc of why we're doing things and how we're actually getting everyone to buy in on it. And that's why I think for the initial wave of AI adoption, we saw almost no bottom line results at companies because teams were experimenting with these, but they were doing it all kind of running in circles. There
Hmm.
was no strategic approach to it, or no, at least measured approach to it. It just became a race as kind of a land grab to see who could do AI first. And I think that kind of mentality, that knee jerk reaction, that willingness to try to respond to what Wall Street or investors need in any given month or quarter, um, that is crippling versus the long term approach. Let's not forget that Jeff Bezos made Amazon successful as a long game. For the first decade that Amazon existed, it lost money every single quarter, every single year.
Hmm.
And he convinced his board to go with him on this longer term vision for what Amazon could be. And look where we are today. Look where we are today.
Well, let's look where we are today. Uh, Scott, we happen to have a sidebar about a certain issue that came up, and I'm really curious your perspective on. I'm going to share a link in the chat that some might have encountered because it's been covered by the New York Times, Atlantic, Wired. I keep seeing this coming up. Full disclosure, I know that author involved, who was caught making up some quotes, or at least publishing some quotes by notable pundits like Kara Swisher, a very high profile, high profile people who are very quotable and who leave quite the paper trail. And it's very clear what they haven't said either, especially when they come across this and say, no, I never said anything like this. Uh, and a- and it's fascinating because this book, like, as perfect fodder for the press, and what we're even talking about right now, is called The Future of Truth. We have an author with a degree in truth from NYU. Okay. I hope you could keep it together for this guy. Uh, and so on one hand, makes stuff up, or at least just takes what algorithms made up and then doesn't really vet this stuff. Unfortunately, yeah, I guess some folks along the review process didn't think that they had to vet things as carefully, and some others clearly missed things. But yeah, I feel badly for them right now because they sure as heck didn't see something like this coming, especially with a published author like this. And so uh, you talk and counsel a lot about leadership. You're a prolific writer and content producer. Um, and and this author in question here also like has like a lot of the defense, at least like in the interview with Wired that did not go very well, was like, well, every author's doing this, right? Uh, I mean, like Scott. I mean, are you worried about your work being, run through an AI checker and someone like calling you out on stuff, or like like
Oh, I'm
what's your take on all this, like how we even got here, and is this as bad as it feels to me?
um it's probably worse, David, if I can be an optimist. Um this is only what we know about, right? Imagine all of the things that haven't been looked into, that haven't been fact checked, that haven't gotten the headlines. I mean, this could be rampant. I uh, I didn't have time to read it this morning, but I bookmarked it. There's an article in the Atlantic about how the honor system at Princeton has been undercut by AI, and the idea was pretty simple: is that when you ask people to sign off, as the Princeton honor system has done for 130 years, that the work that they have submitted is of their own doing, that's not plagiarized, etc. Um, and now people are finding shortcuts around that. They're using AI to do the work for them, and in some cases, it's doing shoddy work. Um, Ironically, the title of that book, "The Future of Truth," is captured perfectly in the behavior of the author. That could be the future of truth that we're looking at, that it becomes something that is malleable, something that is cast aside for the sake of efficiency.
Mm.
And that is scary. That is incredibly scary. I know there have been a few times that one of the things I like to do in my newsletters is provide a relevant historical quote.
Mhm.
And as I've collected more quotes over the years, I've been doing this iteration of my newsletter for about 6 or 7 years.
Mhm.
I've found a number of quotes that are apocryphal, that were attributed to certain individuals and have just become part of the common knowledge. And when you go and you search on the web for, well, what's the source of this? It's just all over people's blogs and quote sites,
Right.
etc. So what I've done is, as I have looked for quotes, my requirement is that there needs to be a date next to the
Mhm.
quote. So I know it is from a particular speech or book or a piece of writing throughout history where it can be
Mhm.
attributed to a person. And a number of times when I've asked Claude or whatever system I happen to be using to help me find a quote, it'll manufacture a quote and literally manufacture a quote. And I know enough to say, well, that author didn't write that or didn't say that, and I press on it.
Mhm.
And you've all done the same kind of thing when your AI systems hallucinate and you call them out. They go, whoa, 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 my bad, my bad. I must have hallucinated I must have overstepped. Well, if it's that easy for a system to be corrected and nobody is actually taking the time to call that out, to have the expertise to be able to recognize where there is a hallucination or a lie,
Mhm.
that is the greatest concern.
Yeah, I mean, in just a wonderful bit of irony, and what's going to start the column I'll run on Friday in the AI brief. Yeah, I was working on this document on with Gemini's Canvas mode, and it does this thing where it will then sometimes create like side documents related to your main document, but the UX is actually terrible for switching between them. And I was trying to find some ways because it sort of looked like it overwrote what it did. I mean, no, it just created multiple docs. And so I kept asking it. And not only was I then asking in Canvas for to fix it, I opened up the Chrome sidebar powered by Gemini and said, Gemini, help me understand how to use Gemini. And it made up one thing after another. Okay. I mean, it told me there was a drop down menu. It told me there was an icon. It told me to close the X and then I'll see the other thing. And closing the X just closed the canvas and made everything disappear. And so, and now I'm just like, as if this makes a shred of difference, right? I'm using like all caps mode, calling Gemini an idiot, and and it's like, yeah, and of course it's being very, very apologetic, and yeah, how could I ever do such a thing? But it's like it, and it is kind of, I mean, it is sort of fitting that AI can lack some version of self-awareness, but this is also when you see how bad like it and they're all like ChatGPT, Claude, I've seen them all do this, where they can't give you instruction manuals about themselves and their own most basic features, right? So it's like for like sourcing a 1,500-year-old quote and making sure you got the right one or something that like everyone just says Abraham Lincoln said, like how many things has Lincoln said that he never said? You know?
I think he said you can't believe everything you read on the internet.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like
Yeah,
one of his.
that's a classic Lincoln.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, so all this, it's like at what, like to what extent do we just accept that this is the future of truth, uh as the author Steve seems to imply,
Yeah.
or we actually try to fight it?
Well, this is where I think, and the generation coming up needs to understand this. This is where we have to put in the work.
Mhm.
Um, it's and I've tried to help my kids be media literate. You know, it started back when it was just Google searches. They would come back and they'd show me, well, when I could get them to use Google. That's a whole other thing. They're walking around with a supercomputer in their hand and just asking questions that they could easily look up. So just coaching them on getting in the habit of doing research is important. But then understanding what a true reputable source is when you get the research results, right? And I think that level of discernment and expertise only comes through practice. It comes through reading. It comes through experience. It comes through doing the hard work, not just accepting whatever is spit out when you put the coin in the machine, essentially. I don't know if you, well, I know you did, David, because we shared this in a private chat. I don't know if everybody saw or had a chance to hear about Ronnie Cheng's speech at class day at Harvard in the last week or so, where he talks about AI. He specifically tells the class of 2026 to destroy AI. Um, I don't know that I'm that extreme, but his message was very clear that AI is going to be an inflection point for us where the truly mediocre get even more mediocre. That the lazy among us, those who don't put in the hard work, those who don't go offline and read and listen and watch and do things to expand our knowledge, are simply going to be amplified more by a system that already amplifies mediocrity. Right. So the idea of building an area of expertise and deeply researching things and going and experiencing them is so important. And this gets right back to how we ran things at Ford when I was there. If the whole market was moving in one direction, or the whole industry was moving in one direction, we would move in the other.
Mhm.
It's a matter of zigging while others are zagging. We could just stand out. So when somebody would get a handwritten letter from me after visiting me in my office at World Headquarters, they were astounded. They would write blog posts about it. Why?
Right.
Because nobody else was doing handwritten letters, right? So it was a human touch. It was something that wasn't being done by others, and it was something that took effort. And people stood up and took note of that, and they still will.
Well, and yeah, the more I'm raising my kid, the more hopeful I am about this next gen where there's that backlash to, so so many of us olds who are leaning on AI so much. And even my daughter just yesterday was like there's something she needs to fix with her email address syncing across a couple of Mac devices. And I'm like, tonight, let's just go and like we'll have AI sort through this and like figure out what to do. She was so disappointed that I wanted to use AI for this. Like, yeah, I mean, to me, this is just one of the easiest things. Like, say AI for some basic tech support. Like, it's going to be the fastest way to get this thing done, right? Like, and and she's just like, don't, yeah, like, like she'd rather even something take longer than not use something she sees as a crutch. And yeah, I think it's like a lot of yeah, I mean a lot of what we're seeing with like late Gen Z, Gen Alpha, kind of rebelling against some of the more like promiscuous behaviors from their parents' generation. And it's uh, like not like smoking, like a lot like recreational drug use, you know, sexual promiscuity itself. It's like more out of favor, and it's like why drinking alcohol is a huge one, right? And it's like and so some just see this as another vice.
Yeah. Yeah. The kids are all right.
Oh, we can hope. So like what else what else is top of mind in the kind of leadership conversations you're having pertaining to all this? Where yeah.
Well, it's interesting because again, with so many leaders interested in AI, they kind of stop in their tracks when I present some of the timeless leadership and working together leadership and management system approaches, which I got directly from Alan Mulally, my
Mhm.
former CEO at Ford. He's actually been reading my newsletter for a while. I discovered by surprise one day when he replied
Mhm.
and told me everything he thought of it. And we've been in regular contact over the recent months, and he's handed off all of his working together leadership and management materials that he developed at Boeing and then at Ford
Mhm.
to help these companies bring people together with a common vision and a process and a set of behaviors that are very human in nature.
Mhm.
So when I talk to clients or when I speak in front of groups about the timeless principles of working together, they're blown away because it is not, first of all, it's not rocket surgery. Um, it has nothing to do with AI. It can be, you can implement it at your family if you want, at a family level, because it's all based on the same principles of love, humility, and respect, appreciating people for who they are, what they know, using data to help make decisions, um, everyone coming together for the common purpose. I mean, it's it's equally at home in the 20th century as it is in the 21st century, and it's so refreshing for them to hear that and to feel a sense of relief at this, because I think there's all too much uncertainty swirling around right now with the way the market is going, the way the future of AI is looking, and for them to be able to plant their feet firmly in the ground
Mhm.
on timeless practices that have worked at big companies and small, and to have my old boss kind of there as the stamp of approval on all of it is really remarkable.
Mhm. And so like have you talked to him? Like you look at like I mean it's almost like a generational handoff here too. And so uh, so like is there anything you could share that you'd be comfortable sharing, like as far as like his perspective where things are now, like what's keeping him up at night, or maybe making him feel a little bit better at night?
Yeah. I think with Alan, he's I don't want to necessarily say he's worried about his legacy, but he does want to see the concept of working together passed on. He
Hmm.
doesn't want to die with him. I'm trying to think of a more gentle way of saying it. But I mean, look, mortality is a reality for all of us. And he wants to ensure that this gets passed on. One of his mentors in his career was Frances Hesselbein,
Hmm.
who for 25 years was the CEO of the Girl Scouts of America.
Hmm.
And her concept was very simple. Actually, I think I have her book right here that they asked Alan to write the foreword for it. And the title is from a poem by the poet Khalil Gibran.
Hmm.
And it's very simple. Work is love made visible,
Hmm.
right? And for Alan, no amount of technology or artificial intelligence can replace the very human quality of love and of caring about our fellow human beings,
Hmm.
whether they're in your family, whether they're in a community group, whether they're in your work team. It's really about loving and supporting those around you.
Hmm.
At which, a lot of times when I hear Alan talk about this, this is going to sound sacrilegious. He almost sounds like Jesus.
Hmm.
And I'm like, it's the same message, basically. Care about other people. Treat them the way you would want to be treated. This isn't remarkable. It's not revolutionary. It's the same stuff we've been hearing for thousands and thousands of years. And I think that's why it's still with us. It's just we need to put more of an accent on it now. Again, zigging while others are zagging,
Hmm.
because again, gets us back to Pope Leo. Humanity is at the core here. We are the world will continue to exist regardless of what technology comes along because humans are here. Well, it'll exist after we're all extinct as well. But as far as our consciousness goes, we
Right.
will always be part of each other. So to me, he's encouraged that there's almost a second wind coming now, that there's going to be more attention on this rather than less because it's needed now more than ever.
Hmm. Are there others right now who, yeah, other business leaders or other kinds of leaders who you think are in that mold, whether it's companies or specific execs who you're like are on your watch list for who you're learning from or inspired by in some way?
Trying to think of any right now that kind of, I mean, there's always anecdotes of things at smaller companies. Like there's a CEO I wrote about a few years ago who he sends out a handwritten note to every employee for their birthday
Hmm.
and I think for their work anniversary. And he
Hmm.
carries a briefcase with him of these cards that in all of his free time he spends writing to them. And when he's in the office, he will pop into people's offices to have a conversation with them. Um, I think that level of simple communication and acknowledging people for who they are, making them feel special,
Hmm.
um, is and another icon from that kind of mold is Mr. Rogers.
Hmm.
We've seen a lot of lift on Mr. Rogers brand in recent years, and I don't think that's a mistake. I think it's because we need it now more than ever, and it's companies that kind of have that level of fundamental understanding. I mean, you can go back to Hewlett Packard. Bill Hewlett he didn't have an office. He would manage by walking around. It's the same concept.
Hmm.
It's about getting to know people and getting a feel for what they're doing and being part of the conversation with them.
Yeah. Well, and then that I mean the Tom Hanks Matthew Reese movie that it came out, but Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, that I mean that floored me. Yeah, I thought it was going to be just a little bit more of a basic biopic, and I kind of put off watching it, and and was not ready for that very intimate look at yeah, what made him tick. But yeah, I highly recommend that if you need. It's like so sweet, but like a little overwhelming. You can't just have that one on in the background. Anyone here with questions for Scott? Anything like you want Scott to get into?
I will jump in. Thanks very much for
Please,
the
Jim.
opportunity. I am so frustrated by how senior executives don't get it. And there's a couple of problems. One is AI is not a database, it's not a search engine, it's not a computer as we know it. And so they don't understand that leaning into hallucinations has value. They want it to be deterministic. But then they can't understand how it's valuable because it's so good at doing tasks. And executives don't do tasks. They have people who do tasks for them. They make decisions. How are you convincing senior executives? What framework is getting them to turn the light bulb on?
So I had an interesting occurrence just a couple of weeks ago, Jim, that I think illustrates this. Um, I work with a small family-owned auto dealership, and the general manager took, I think, 8 or 9 different sources of data on company performance and fed it into his platform of choice. And it came out with this marvelous 24-page report specific for each director that was responsible for different areas of the business, and told them how they were performing, where the numbers were popping, what they might need to work on. And he packaged this up and he sent one report to each of the directors with their specific data on it, with the front 2 pages and the back 2 pages from the main report, and packaged it up for everyone. So we had like 11 customized reports. And then he sent the master report to the owner of the business, who himself has been a huge advocate of AI and has been pushing the company to figure out how to use AI. Hasn't necessarily guided them on how, but said they must use AI in some fashion. And the email response that came from the owner to the general manager who sent out that AI generated report was very clearly an email that was generated by AI. So I've got 2 leaders who are using their AI systems to talk to each other rather than just picking up the phone or walking through things or talking like real humans. And I almost, just to really kick irony in the balls here, I almost used one of my AI systems to respond to both of them. But what I did is I used it as a learning, as a lesson for both of them, where I could say, okay, there's some great stuff in what you've provided here, but you're not talking to each other. You're talking at each other. And that's the lesson here, I think, is that we need to, if you're going to use any tool, I don't care whether it's a power wrench or an electric toothbrush or AI, it's only as good as the directions you give it and the involvement that you have with it, right? So you don't just point it in a direction, set it loose, and then expect that the results are fine. And we went through the report that was actually generated by the AI, and the department that was called out as the best performing is perceived by both the general manager and the owner as the worst performing department in the company. So I'm like, square that with me. How do you actually rely on a system to tell you something that you know is inherently false, right? So for them, they're like, oh, wow. Here we thought we were being more efficient. And I said, well, the good news is you have created an efficiency in terms of what AI can and cannot do for you. So now let's go back, recalibrate, and figure out exactly how we actually want to use this tool to help us and our teams work better, help provide us with a little more visibility, and help our teams with specific deliverables that they might need to be responsible for.
Great story. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't have scripted it any better than that, Jim. It's amazing. I'm watching it go down like, oh my God, this is one for the archives.
Yeah, and Gene's got that comment, if it's the case, maybe the CEO can be replaced by AI, and I mean, we're seeing examples of.
Well, and Gene, I will tell you, no spoilers, but go watch that episode of The Twilight Zone. Okay, I think you'll like the twist in the end.
What is your favorite personal use case at the moment?
Favorite personal use case,
Or something you did recently that surprised and delighted you?
I've been getting deeper and deeper with Claude. I've got accounts on Gemini and Copilot and Chat GPT and Claude, and I finally decided to up my ante and pay for the business plan on Claude and start to put it through its paces. And when David said I am a prolific writer, he wasn't kidding. I went through my archives on Timeless and Timely, and this has been eating at me for about 3 or 4 years. Just so you know how far back it goes. I've got 900 entries on that website, and I didn't start tagging them at the beginning, so it's all been kind of a retroactive process. So I fed my entire archive into Claude and asked for categories, asked for trends it could see, and I put a daily task into the cowork system where I'm asking it to resurface old content, dare I say timeless content, that could be timely again, and using it as a content engine to help newer subscribers find some of those old gems that, they're buried in the recesses of my mind, and I couldn't necessarily come up with them on the fly, but to have Claude go and do this work and be my research assistant, essentially, that is providing me new opportunities and new insights as to how I can repurpose content for what I need it for today. And if it's lying to me, I'm pretty much the authority on this, so I know.
You'll see.
There was an author named James Taylor, not the musician, who was the head of the object-oriented programming stuff back in the 80s. And he wrote book after book after book. And in one interview, he said, well, my latest books, I have a library of my books at home. And I think of a topic and I go, well, I wrote about it in that book and I grab one of those copies. And I wrote about it in that book and I grab one of those copies. And I take a razor blade and I cut out the pages and spread them on the floor and create a whole new book. It's like, well, yeah, now we can do it at a push of a button.
Yeah, it's effectively what's going on. Yeah. So Dan asked about using Claude Code, and actually, Dan, yeah, that is exactly what I am using for that resurfacing of content. I put it in there as a routine, for a digest, and it's coming up with ideas for me, and sometimes I accept them, sometimes I don't. I still kind of keep a tight editorial eye on things, that I don't think there's going to be any replacing of that in terms of judgment. Because I know my readers, I know my platform the best. So for me, and here's an interesting sidebar. One of the offerings of my newsletter is every other Saturday I do an entry called Off the Clock. And it is a look at words and language and history. And talking about deciding which pieces I want to include in this archival digest, it's curation. And what is curation but being discerning about things, taking the time to care? Because the word curation comes from the old Latin word curare, which means to care. It literally means to care. So curators at your museums and libraries and people that are curating things for a part of their jobs, they care deeply about what it is they're doing. And again, that looped me back to the working together philosophy about love and care and that human element that can't be replaced by a machine or a set of cogs that are simply wheeling around to produce stuff.
Scott, so I'm a curator, so I hear what you're saying, and I actually have, so the way that I work with Claude, or even I have an extension for Notebook LM, is I curate in my tool. The content is then prepared in Curator with custom GPTs and content tags. So when I pass them over to Claude or Notebook LM, those content tags become anchors that I can use to index the content. And I find that that works a lot better than just dumping raw content into it and then asking for. So that's where the human element comes in. I mean, all of these are tools that we can use, but you have to understand the philosophy and the architecture behind it, that they're just probabilistic machines. And if you want to bring your own insights and creativity into it, you need to mold it. You need to know how to use it properly. And the way to do it is first know the content that you're putting out there, and then have an imagination of what you want to get out of it. And in that sense, these AI tools work incredibly well if you, I believe, know how to.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. And it takes that level of understanding and discernment as a human to be able to kind of navigate that, because the machine's going to do whatever the machine wants to do, but this is a way of kind of forcing it into a paradigm that you understand better than any other because of your close association with it.
I think we become lazy. I mean, a lot of times AI can generate answers that are maybe 80% good, but 80% good doesn't work. If you have an idea that you want to share, you need to make sure that your idea comes through, and 80% is not acceptable.
I think this brings to mind an issue I think we're already dealing with it, but we're going to see it even more for marketers, and that is the amount of slop that is being generated out there that people have to wade through to find actual content or stuff that matters. Again, it's like the handwritten note. The marketers who take the time to personally curate, to personally write, to imbue more of their content with that human element, the stuff that's going to stand out from the mediocre crap that Ronnie Chang was talking about, that AI is so great at producing. You'll know. Fundamentally, you will know when you're dealing with human-generated content versus machine-generated content, I would hope.
Scott, I had a quick question for you. I think I said it earlier in the chat, but obviously you talk about, principles and values and things regarding timeless leadership. I would argue in defense of AI, what I've seen in my workflows and working with different clients is that AI actually kind of points out where there is lacking, where leadership and management is lacking in terms of whether it's the vision, the values, or even the workflows that they have. Like if you put AI in something, it can only do the job as good enough as you train it or as you curate it, as you build it. And so for me, what I've seen, I'm kind of just give your perspective. It's usually a lack of leadership / management in a lot of solutions when teams try to adopt AI. Wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't think you're too far off, Earl. I mean, how many times have we seen individuals promoted simply because they were good individual performers?
Yes.
That's management 101, right? It's the Peter principle. Okay, you're great at what you do, but that doesn't necessarily translate to you managing people, which is what leadership is about.
Right.
Leadership is not about, doing all of the functions. It's about helping people achieve more together. And I think that laziness or that gap in leadership and management, again, is only amplified by AI. And so the temptation would be to say, oh yeah, we can use AI to replace leaders. Well, we can replace mediocre leaders with AI, but you can't replace the way leadership is supposed to act. And I think that's the gap that we're seeing right now, is that we need more We need more leaders to understand
Yeah.
what's required of them to step up and to actually lead and to be among people.
Don't you think there's a lot of mediocre leaders out there?
Oh, they
Sure.
are. That's kind of the point, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was sort of my point also. Like talking about replacing workers, it
Mhm.
seems like we could use AI to replace mediocre leaders first, and then give
Yeah.
take those overpaid, those high salaries and provide them as bonuses to the people who actually do the work.
Right. Yeah, the best description I've found is to do the analogy with Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan as a player is completely, his track record is completely different than Michael Jordan as a coach. And I think is that lack in that leadership and management skill set that a lot of people aren't deliberately taught. It's a skill set that needs to be learned. And you just don't get it because you're a good coder or a good designer or a good creative or something. You need to actually learn management skills and leadership skills.
Right. Also, Michael Jordan was a great basketball player and a terrible baseball player.
We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that.
Well, one of the stories that Alan Mulally shared with me in his early days when he was kind of elevated as a leader of engineers. He was a trained aeronautics engineer at Boeing, and they elevated him to a leadership position. And with one of his direct reports, he would show up with his plans, and Alan would make him do it over and come back and represent his plans. And it was never good enough. And after, I don't know how many different iterations, the guy basically threw up his hand and said, Alan, I can't do this. Clearly, you want me to be you, and I will never be you. Right. And Alan realized, it's not about creating people in your own image. It's about helping people become better versions of who they are. That's the leader's job. Right. So if you take a Michael Jordan or an Alan Mulally as an engineer, and they're simply building mini versions of themselves, that's not how it works.
There is the antithetical story of that with Henry Kissinger rejecting a speech. And the 8th time he said, is that the best you can do? And the guy finally, the 8th time, he said, yes, I've polished it. It's perfect. Kissinger said, okay, now I'll read it. Which you can do with a large language model.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, this has been a lot of fun. Always great to get your perspective on things, and especially in front of a bigger group and having this more of a community conversation, and love the concurrent threads going on during this. So recommend everyone in the room who is not yet subscribed to Timeless and Timely to give it a look, because you'll get lots of thoughtful takes on leadership and everything else that's on Scott's mind these days. And there's a lot, as you could tell. And so Scott, be great to just have you as part of the community and keep these conversations going, because they're really important. So glad we have space for things like this.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here today, David. And thank you to everyone for this great conversation. I love engaging on this kind of stuff and hearing all these different perspectives. So thank you so much.